Oh no, I broke my thread. Whatever shall I do? So that's going to be the point of this video. It's going to be, oh no, you just broke your thread, and a bunch of different methods of kind of recovering from that without having to start the fly over. And if you watched my last pattern video from a couple days ago, you can probably guess why that I'm doing this video, because I broke my thread right when I was tying my whip finish at the end. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and I'll show you, I've got actually 7 methods I'm going to cover here about how to recover from breaking your thread at various stages of the fly. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of work my way through these. First one here, let's say that I've just started my thread, and I'm not used to the thread, or maybe I tick the barb or something, or that happens. And anyway, let's say right when I've started the thread and I break it, even if I'd left some of the thread on there, at that stage it makes a lot more sense just to start over. So that's kind of the first method, and it's the most obvious and stupid one. Now let's say that I've got more going on. Let's say here, I'll just grab some material here. Let's say maybe I've started tying in my thread base and I've wrapped over lead wire, maybe I've tied in a tail. I've got some things going on the fly, and so I don't want to completely start over. But let's say I'm like right here, and it breaks right there. As long as I don't have anything that's absolutely critical, I mean, you can see here the tag end. If I don't have anything that's getting looser right now as that thread starts to unravel, I'm just going to come right back in. I've got mostly a clean hook shank here. I'm just going to come right back in and then just tie right over the broken end, and then I'll cut my thread, my new thread, and then my the broken end of that thread, and basically no harm, no foul there. So I'm still kind of ready to go. Now, by the same token, if I'm going to just back this up a little bit, so that's the second method. Now, let's say I'm getting close to, or maybe I even am in a situation where maybe this tag end is going to start unraveling and that tail is going to start coming loose. And so I am now worried actually about potentially losing my tying tension. And what I'm going to do in that situation, after I drop my hackle pliers, is I'm going to grab a hackle pliers here, or just anything that's going to grab that thread. And I'm actually going to first grab that thread and then clip that with my hackle pliers. And so that's going to be a little tighter than if I was just leaving those thread wraps to be loose while I wrapped back over them. But then otherwise, it's the same. I start my new thread and then wrap back over, and now I'm good to go again. And then again, I would just trim both the tag ends there. So that's number 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and pause this because I need to reconfigure the screen here. Alright, so for the 4th method here, let's say I'm kind of more towards the midpoint of the fly, and I'm just going to cut this because I don't want to accidentally actually pull off this this foam. So let's say I'm here and I just broke my thread there. Now I don't want to do that wrap back over method here because I've got too much going on. That's going to create too much thread buildup. So what I'm going to do instead is catch that tag end here, and then I'm going to just throw like 1 half hitch in there. Just something to kind of hold it in place and prevent it from loosening anymore. And then I'm going to actually get my super glue here and glue that knot, because obviously that single half hitch isn't going to hold. But I don't have much. Let's say even this tag end was even a little shorter, but let's say I had enough to do that. I could have also maybe backed off if I hadn't, if I'd had only this much thread, let's say, I could have also backed off and used, backed off 3 or 4 turns and then used that tag end to make that single half hitch. But anyway, what I'm going to do here now is I'm still actually going to wrap over that tag end, but I've got, let's say, 3 turns there now. And since that glue is on there, I don't need as much. I just made 2 turns now to actually secure the end of that, and it's really the glue that's holding it in place. So that's method 4. All right, so the next method is actually pretty similar to the last one, but it's kind of more what we want to see. So I've got that body tied in there, and I built up a little underbody here. And then let's say I break my thread, let's say right about here. And so that's going to start unraveling, but I do have a little bit more time now. And let's say I've got a dubbed body or something on here. Maybe I just ticked the thread against the hook point or something while I was wrapping the body. But I'm going to grab that, and what I'm actually going to do is do kind of a preemptive slight whip finish. And this is why I really do like using a whip finish tool. I know how to tie one by hand, but I don't do it very often, just because I can get this thing into tighter spaces, and I lost the grip on that tag. But anyway, if you have enough thread to do even a 2 or 3 turn whip finish, that's going to be your really secure method of restarting things, rather than just a half hitch and some glue. This is going to be just as strong as or almost as strong as an actual intentional knot. So that's method 5, and then I would just restart my thread and then proceed as normal. All right, now we're really getting down to the nitty gritty here. Let's say we're kind of near the end of the fly, or we otherwise have a situation where we really can't do any of the other methods without building up too much thread or getting a big wad of glue or a whole bunch of thread wraps or something where we don't want them. And so this is what happened when I was tying the other day. My thread broke about here. And so let's say I've already built up the head on this Elk Caddis. I don't want to restart my thread and make a bunch more thread turns. Imagine this is a much smaller hook, for example. So what I'm going to do in that situation is I'm going to grab that tag end. And if I had to, I could even back it off, a couple turns and still get it. So let's say that's all I have is right there. Just that little bit of thread. And so what I'm going to do here, because I don't really have enough room to do anything else, is a glue knot. And a lot of people actually like to finish their flies using a glue knot. I don't, unless I, like a situation like this where I have to. So what you do is you have your thread, and then you brush on super glue, and you actually brush that onto the thread that's hanging. And obviously this would be easier if it was still on the bobbin, but I'm actually brushing that onto that thread that's hanging, and then I'm going to wrap those couple turns of thread I actually have room to wrap there. And so functionally that's the same amount of space on the hook shank as a whip finishing knot, but I didn't have room to do a whip finish knot or even a half hitch. And so I'm now letting that hang for a second to let it dry, and then I'll eventually pull that. And that's going to be pretty secure. It's not as secure as an actual knot. You might add some more glue over the top of that, but like I said, a lot of people actually like to finish their flies like that, and it's not ideal, but it's if you're in a situation where you're going to lose a bunch of stages of the fly, either at the end of the fly, when you're finishing the fly, or somewhere earlier in the fly where you just don't have any room, don't have any thread to work with, don't want to create any bulk, that's probably your best method. Okay, so my final method here is what I'm going to call, glue it and pray. And so I'm here, and I've just broken my thread. There's not enough to grab to do that glue knot. In fact, I'll just cut this off completely. Let's say let's say maybe I cut it at the eye, like my eye was a little sharp or something like that. So I don't want to back off any, because then I lose my wing. I don't have enough to do that glue knot. I certainly can't do a whip finish with what's left. If I restarted my thread over the top of this, it would create too much bulk. And so this is what I call glue it and pray. And all I'm going to do here is get my super glue again, and trying not to get it in the eye, trying not to get it on the materials, I'm really going to load up on that super glue. This is actually less secure in a lot of ways than the glue knot I did in the last little snippet, but because it's on the surface of the thread, and so it's not going to drip down into the thread as well as when you put it on the thread and then make turns of thread. In other words, it's not bound on itself as well, and it's also harder to get it on there neatly. I'm more likely to get in the eye of this hook and things like that. Imagine this was a size 16 or 18 hook rather than a size 8. But that's kind of your last resort. Just glue it and then sit on it for a second, and hopefully that's gonna hold up for you. Those are some methods of dealing with breaking thread breakage at various stages of the fly without having to back up too much. As always, if you find this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you click the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below. If you are looking for a guided trip in the Yellowstone region, feel free to get in touch at flyfishmontana.biz. And also, here's just a little announcement. Just finally ordered an action camera, and so I'm going to start doing video fishing reports and kind of more vibe-based content, if you will, actual doing little fishing shows while I'm out guiding and so on. I just recorded an episode of the Destination Angler podcast, and he asked me for action camera videos, and I didn't have any, and so that was kind of my impetus to go ahead and bite the bullet and kind of jump into the content creator world a little further. I will see you in a few days with a pattern video.